Hi guys, I just thought of something. Namely, recently I did a lot of those little interviews with a lot of interesting people, and some people wrote to me saying, "Why am I not turning, this more into a debate? Why I'm not arguing with people more?" And I don't want to do that because I realized that there is really no point in arguing with just about anybody. Actually, if you argue with somebody whom you disagree with, you're just gonna make it worse, basically. I read an interesting study, a study that was published in a newspaper. This study was done with people that were very much for the death penalty, and people that were very much against the death penalty. And what they realized is that it didn't matter. Well, not only didn't it matter that, they were then exposed to various facts that agreed and disagreed with their stance. And of course, when they were shown facts that agreed with their stance, it made them even more determined. And they thought that their stance was even more correct. But the interesting thing is that when they were shown facts that disagreed with their stance, that were basically more or less disproving their arguments, it didn't only not make them it didn't only it didn't only not make them less convinced of their previous stance, it actually made them more convinced as well. And I thought that's really interesting. And personally, when I at the beginning, a couple of years ago, I still made debates. For example, I already said I'm not really a religious guy, but I'm not an atheist. I used to be an atheist in my childhood because I was more or less raised that way. But by now I would say that I'm not an atheist. So a couple of years ago I still made debates with atheists, and I thought that I had some pretty good arguments, and that I had some pretty good scientific discoveries, and that included of course atheists. That we also went into that whole debate of evolution versus creationism and stuff, and I saw that I found some pretty good scientific evidence, but I realized that it really doesn't matter what evidence you show somebody. Even if you have really good evidence, and if you really focus on a scientific discussion, it doesn't matter at all. On the contrary, it will only make the people more convinced of their already established viewpoint. So it doesn't matter what facts you present somebody. It's almost impossible for them for anybody to change his established worldview. So I'm not doing debates like that anymore. And of course that goes for people. It doesn't matter what stance it is, and it doesn't matter what topic. I really feel that the more you argue with somebody, the more convinced he will be of his own opinion. And originally I really couldn't understand that, but that's really how it is. Because when I was raised, as I already said, I had a very difficult childhood, and a great part of my childhood, I was isolated from society, and I was I had very poor social skills, and it was very difficult for me to understand how people think, how people react. So when I grew up, what kind of helped me keep my sanity in a difficult environment that I grew up in was watching Star Trek. I was a really big Star Trek fan in my youth, and I particularly liked the character of Mr. Spock because he was always very logical, and I thought, well, that would be the correct approach, right? To be very scientific and to be very, very logical, and of course, naturally, you would assume that science, when it comes to scientific topics, it's very important, and it is. When it comes to scientific topics, it's very important to approach them unbiased and to approach them from a purely logical standpoint and to just look, at the evidence without any preconceived notion. And so that is kind of how I started to think, and it was really inspired by Mr. Spock. But as I said, what I realized is that when I gotten to know society better, is that that's really not at all how it works in society. Not even among scientists, or maybe even especially among scientists, because most scientists they're not approaching something from an objective standpoint, and they're not trying to to just logically approach an issue. They're also human beings. They have feelings, and they have preconceived notions, and most of them will just they will try to prove what they already think is correct. That's not the way it should be, but sadly, in most cases, that's the way it is, because there are very few Mr. Spocks. That's probably because that's probably why they made Mr. Spock non-human. Precisely because humans are not like that. Humans are very emotional, and they're not unbiased, and so. So me trying to emulate Mr. Spock's approach didn't work at all, especially in interpersonal, relationships. In contact with other people, it didn't work at all because other people don't at all approach things like that. People are very emotional. So it was only later on when I got a little into psychology. Of course, I never studied psychology, but it was very important for me to learn a bit about psychology, about how people behave, and only then was I able to realize that when having contact with other people, that logical approach does not work at all, because people are not logical. So that's also when I stopped debating with people, and when I stopped trying to convince people of just about anything, because it's impossible. Even if you have really well-established scientific proof that you can show people, it doesn't do anything at all. People will not at all acknowledge it, and they will just stick to whatever they already believe. And of course, I'm talking in general. This goes for just about anybody with any kind of view, So that was a hard lesson for me. I would really like to, at the very beginning, I still made, also you could say scientific videos, where I was really just showing some scientific evidence. But I was completely bashed by people with different opinions, because they're not looking at the scientific evidence at all. They don't care about that. They say, "Well, this is all false. This can't be true. No, this is not the way I have been raised and educated. This disagrees with what I already know. So it cannot possibly be true." That's how people react. And of course, as I said, I'm talking in general. Just about everybody will react that way, no matter what his views is, as long as he has some kind of pre-established worldview, and as soon as he is confronted with just about anything that disagrees with his pre-established worldview. So I don't do that anymore. So what I like to do now, and you can see that in my recent interviews with various people, is I just like to talk with people and give them an opportunity to voice their own opinions, and also then of course give the audience the opportunity to also make up their own opinion. So yeah.